For more on the Israel-Hamas conflict, we're joined by Michael Lynk. He's a Professor Emeritus, Faculty of Law at Western University in London, Ontario, Canada. And he's a former UN Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in the occupied Palestinian territory. Thanks very much, Michael, for joining us on the program today. As we mentioned, Israel is sending a delegation to Qatar to continue talks. On the table will be the Hamas proposal that includes a three-stage proposal to end the war, deemed unrealistic by Israel. So what are we looking at here? What are the main hurdles to get over?
Sure, there's two main hurdles. One is really simply a matter of detail. How many Israeli hostages to be released for how many Palestinian prisoners being kept by Israel. And one would think that people bargaining honestly and in good faith will find a number that both sides can live with. The real issue is the second one, which was mentioned by your reporter, is the issue of a permanent ceasefire or not. Hamas, in any of these negotiations over the last several months, has always insisted upon a permanent ceasefire, which would see Israel leave the Gaza Strip and Hamas basically stay in place. Israel doesn't want that. Netanyahu has said on several occasions he wants to be able to complete the war, annihilate Hamas politically and militarily in the Gaza Strip, and only would want to see a temporary pause for the exchange of hostages and detainees, but allow him to continue the war, in his mind, to the end.
Now, Biden has said that an incursion into Rafah would be a red line. Israel is making plans to go to Rafah. With Schumer now calling for new elections in Israel, what could this mean for US support of Netanyahu's war?
Sure. Look, I think these are, in effect, tactical differences between a Biden administration that has grown increasingly exasperated by Benjamin Netanyahu and a prime minister who's desperate to want to stay in power. Therefore, he wants to continue the war until he has completed his main war objective, the annihilation of Hamas. But he faces reckoning as soon as this war is over for what happened on October 7th as well. He has three criminal trials that are looming on his shoulder, all related to alleged corruption allegations. So it's in his interest and in his vision that he knows he would probably lose an election to his main rival, Benny Gantz. So there's not a lot of incentive for Benjamin Netanyahu to heed America's war calls or to want to end this war anytime soon. And that's, I think, what is going to be the main sticking point between the U.S. and Israel. It will only be if the U.S. decides to play hardball, which it hasn't yet so far, and say, end of weapons transfers to Israel, and you must accept a ceasefire now. Only then, I think, will this war end.
And late this week, Mohammed Mustafa was appointed as the next Prime Minister by President Abbas. This is part, of course, of the reforms the US is pressing for. Critics are sceptical that a new Palestinian Prime Minister can produce the, quote, revitalized Palestinian Authority. What does the US want or need from the PA, and what does a US-backed appointment mean for Gaza?
Well, what the U.S. wants it would be a Palestinian Authority that's strong enough to be able to move into Gaza and to become the governing authority once this war is over, and be able to take over the management of the administration. That's unlikely to happen in the short run, even with the most optimistic of views with respect to this. Gaza has been absolutely flattened, particularly in the north and in the center. We're talking probably somewhere in the range of $40 to $50 billion in order to be able to rebuild Gaza. That's going to require not only international money, but probably international management, in addition to whatever presence the Palestinian Authority would have. But the other thing to keep in mind is, the Palestinian Authority is weak primarily because Israel wants it to be weak. It wants it to be strong enough to be able to deter attacks on Israel or attacks on Israeli settlements by Palestinian militants, but it doesn't want it to be any stronger than that. And by and large, Israel has succeeded in keeping the Palestinian Authority relatively weak, and lately it's been denying it the money that it's promised under the Oslo agreements through taxes that Israel collects and is supposed to be delivering to the Palestinian Authority. So the authority is weak politically, and it's also weak economically.
And of course, you spoke of infrastructure, but there are millions sheltering in Rafah. What can be done for those people who are there to be safe? Where can they go to stay away from this incoming incursion?
Sure. Israel keeps on talking about creating humanitarian islands. That may mean moving some people north, but that's an enormous number of people. Ordinarily, before the war began, Rafah was probably home to about 300,000 people. There are now somewhere between 1.5 and 1.7 million Palestinians sheltering there, and there really is no place for them to go where humanitarian organizations, including the UN, can wind up giving them the necessary water, shelter, food, health services, and security protection. So this is why the United States is exceptionally nervous about a full-scale offensive into Rafah, and I think it should be nervous.
All right, Michael Lynk, I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Sally.